Hello, Ghouls Gang, and thank you so much for joining us for this very special Ghouls Magazine Q&A. My name is Rebecca, and I'm assistant editor at Ghouls Magazine, and today I am joined by an amazing guest who I've been dying to speak to for years now, it feels like. She's a wonderful presence in the horror community, and despite the distance, I do feel like we've got a good friendship going. She is a costume designer, a fashion historian. She is an incredible writer with bylines at places such as Fangoria and Rue Morgue. She is creator of a fantastic blog called Hanging by a Thread, and also that now has a podcast attached to it as well by the same name, that's Hanging by a Thread. She is also a lecturer on costumes on film, and let me tell you, I've been to some of her lectures and they are amazing, not to be missed. I've actually stayed up till like 1 a.m. in the morning here in the UK just to catch the lectures of this fabulous guest of mine. So I am honoured and thrilled to be able to welcome Jolene Marie Richardson. Hello, Jolene.
Hello, thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm so excited to get to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And thanks so much for taking time out to chat to us here at Ghouls. We're excited to have you. So before we kick it off then and talk about all things costume and horror and all those sort of fabulous things, would you like to just give everyone a bit of an overview of what it is you do and who you are in the community?
Sure. Yeah, like you said, I'm a costume designer and a fashion historian. You can find my work on The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs and the upcoming Scare Package 2. I've done some pieces, some really awesome thought-provoking pieces for Fangoria, and I have my lectures and everything, and some other things down the line that hopefully I could talk about soon. But
oh, she's a tease.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I was so happy that Rebecca, that you came to one of my lectures too. And the whole room, I remember when you were like, I'm from England, everybody was like, oh my goodness, she stayed up so late because it was at 7 o'clock on the East Coast. And I'm so thankful that you did.
It's dedication. I don't do it for everybody. Yeah, so it's worth saying that Jolene, I found your work just around the time when I had begun to start my series of Moving Pictures Film Club on the women of Hitchcock's films, because I'd started to, in looking at the women of Hitchcock's films, I'd started to really enjoy applying analysis to film through costume. And through that, I found you, and it just helped me to see how much costume reveals about mood, about psychology, about the plot. And yeah, I just wondered if you could tell me a bit about what first drew you to like costume and design.
Yeah, it's like a bit of everything. So I think when I was younger, I found myself through theater. There were a bunch of different career paths, like, when you're a kid, that you want to do. That my mom used to tell me all the time that, like, if it had a costume, you were there. Or like a lot of my career choices, like I wanted to be a nurse when I was a kid, but didn't realize that they didn't wear the World War II nurses uniform. So it's like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. Like they don't have a cute dress. Right. So a lot of my stuff was tied in with clothing from a really young age, like unbeknownst to me. And I went to college and I studied costume construction. I worked in theater, and I've been a dresser for over 10 years, running shows on and off Broadway and regional theaters and stuff. But then when I went to grad school, I went for design. I didn't know that I wanted to be a designer. It was something that I had done a little bit in college, but didn't really have the opportunity to like do it properly, because you have a lot of assistance from your teachers when you're doing a lot of different disciplines like I was. So I went and I was like, all right, let me see if I could try this. And I went to Trinity College in Dublin, and had this incredible teacher over there. Her name is Joan O'Cleary, and she taught my fashion history class. And that was kind of the moment to me where I wasn't the avant-garde designer. My brain didn't operate in this like forward thinking fashion way. It was more of, I loved the history. I loved what clothing could tell about a person. And she helped bring that out of me. And then from there, it just sort of clicked. And I was always into vintage fashion. I was always thrifting. I was always looking to the 40s and the 50s and stuff of clothing. And I didn't know how to blend that in with my love of horror. And then I think one day it just clicked. I was like, wait, it is the same thing. Like I can do both of those things and have those two sides of me don't feel so separate. So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
I feel like everybody has that sort of one person in their life that just gives them that push and like really encourages you and inspires you. So it's so lovely to hear your story and to hear how you blended, as you say, you blended those things together. So would you say, is it the 40s and 50s are your sort of favorite decades when it comes to
So
costume?
the beginning half of the 20th century is really like in fashion history, some of my favorite because the silhouette for women in particular and men have changed so rapidly from 1910 through 1949. But horror wise, I think, I don't know if I have a favorite decade for horror, like as far as fashion goes, because when you get into like this like cultural revolution of the late 60s, there is a shift in fashion and it becomes much more dressed down, and that's where a lot of our horror lives. So for me, it's a lot of in horror space finding out like, okay, well, yes, we shopped all this clothing, we really didn't have costume designers for a lot of these films, so what are the jeans, what are the t-shirts, what are those saying? So that's the challenge. But yeah, I love the beginning half of the 20th century is my favorite for fashion.
And so am I right in thinking then that you've worked across like different platforms, so television, film, and stage? Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. And so I wanted to talk to you a bit about how in the world of costume and design, those worlds are different from each other, if indeed they are in like the approach to costuming. And do you have one specific world that you prefer working in than the others, or maybe if that's too mean to make you pick, are there like pros and cons in those different worlds?
Yeah, so there's pros and cons in all of the worlds. Film and TV are kind of the same, and then theater is its own beast because you're working with cameras in one and obviously a live audience in the other. Theater is something that I've always done. I don't think it's ever something I'm going to give up, no matter how frustrated I get with it. I still love it.
It's like all part of the journey. Yeah,
exactly. It's like a bad boyfriend that you just keep going back to, which is not good. But theater does have its moments. I will say, theater, coming from theater into film, it has taught me this maximized control chaos that yes, you have in film because you're going, but there's a lot of hurry up and wait in film, which is really nice. You're doing it in bursts of like 2 weeks to a month, which is really nice. In theater, you're just going and you're not stopping until the show closes or you move on to the next project. So that's the main differences. I mean, costuming wise, there's not really a whole lot of difference. My approach is still the same. My what do you call it? Like how I go about designing my process is still the same. I think there's a lot more period on a stage than there is in film a lot of the times because I work in low budget, so you're not really, people don't have the budget money to do a period piece. But one day I will. I'm manifesting that. I'd love to do something like Outlander one day. But what I love about film is that there's more creativity. And I'll be honest, I feel more respected sometimes in film because theater, there's these weird hierarchies. And obviously there's some issues in the film industry with pay equity and stuff. But as a department head, I feel a little bit more respected in film. There's a little bit more freedom for myself in film, some more creative ingenuity, but I think there's creative ingenuity in both sectors. There's different details that get looked at too, right? Like you're on stage and you're trying to fill a house, so some of the details can be hidden, and that like I can hide a huge 4-inch snap on the back of the dress and just kind of call it a day because okay, the actress isn't going to turn around, but I can't do that in film. So it's just kind of retraining your brain and getting yourself in a different headspace.
Yeah. And those sort of low budget projects, like I've worked in performing arts, and they can really push it to be incredibly creative and innovative
Yeah,
in ways that can be really surprising, can't they, and rewarding.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you talked a bit about, you sort of touched there on like the creative process. So then I wanted to ask, as someone who knows absolutely nothing, who just watches horror films on VHS and goes, oh, they're beautiful costumes, but doesn't actually know anything about how it comes to be. Can you tell us a little bit about the actual process from like, so does it, I always think, oh, it must begin with a sketch and like you do see in films, and then progress from there to maybe, you know, using models and things like that. So how does that like process start, and like how many stages are there? And like, just if you could just take us through how you get from an idea to something like tangible.
Yeah, of course. And you know more than you think you know. So don't you give yourself credit. um, so I so in theater it does start with a sketch. Film doesn't always start with a sketch, which was a huge relief for me because I cannot draw. So I was so afraid when I got into design. I was like, I can't draw any of this. And they were like,
Oh
it's fine. You
wow.
don't have to draw when you get into film. And I'm like, great. So yeah. So you don't have to draw to be a designer, which is great. So I will just kind of go through, I love Pinterest. I love those, like creating mood boards on Pinterest. So I'll read the script a few times. My playwriting teachers in college told me read a script 3 times. Once because you need to familiarize yourself with the script. The second, now that you know the material, to get into it. And then a third time to really understand what you're doing. And then obviously you're going to read it a few more times after that, but like your initial read throughs should be at least 3 times. So I try to do at least 3 reads before I even sit down with my ideas. And then I'll speak with the director and kind of talk about what they're feeling, what feelings they want to evoke, you know, what we're trying to capture, and give them like my initial reactions to how this piece makes me feel. Because when you read something, you know, even when you read a novel, you already have what you think it looks like in your head,
Yeah.
and you start forming those thoughts, right? Yeah. So I try to do that, and I sit down with my Pinterest and I go through each character. And now Pinterest has these sections on board, so you can make it's been so helpful. So I've been making like sub boards per each character, which has been really nice. And I'll usually share that with the director, and then we'll have a conversation about what works, what doesn't work. And then from there, I'll usually start either making or shopping or thrifting or doing a combination of all of those. And then that's when I bring the actor in, because I like having a solid grasp on who this character is before I take it to the actor, because that actor will always have a solid grasp on that character before they come to me. So I want to have that conversation coming from an equal playing field, so
Mhm.
that even though it's their face and their body on the screen, knowing that it's both of our jobs that are making this character come to life. So that's a really special relationship too. And we'll have those conversations in fitting. So usually it is shopping, but shopping in the mindset of the character, or creating in the mindset of the character. And so I
Oh, I
like to,
love that you go
yeah,
shopping maybe as the character.
yeah. So I'll sometimes music will come up in my head that I'm like, this
Wow.
song feels like this piece or this scene or something. So I'll like start listening to that kind of music, or certain imagery and stuff like that. And
Oh, I
yeah, so
love that.
it's an amalgamation. It really just depends on the piece. Like I just did a movie with my friend called Cannibal Mukbang, where it was this like Y2K technology world that I don't live in. I'm not that kind of person, but it was fun getting to explore that because it was so different from me. So the music and the feeling and all of this stuff, the colors, that was a lot of fun to explore.
So would you say then it's once you've done your sort of initial research, it becomes a sort of semi-collaborative
Yeah.
process? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll, if I'm working by myself, or if I'm working with an assistant, we'll go out and we'll source everything, bring everything to the actors. And you always want to have your best options for the actor to look at, so that one, they feel comfortable, but also knowing that like things that you really feel strongly about do end up in the final product, and then they have those to pick from. It's a little designer trick.
We're getting all the tips. Yeah, the
give your
inside
actor
knowledge.
your best 3 shirts. But and then when the actor comes in for their fitting, we'll just kind of talk and see what works and what doesn't work. Usually a lot of the times they're good about base layers like pants and tops and stuff. Shoes, I always like to give the actor, I will give the actor images of shoes that I'm thinking, but when it comes to comfort and safety, specifically in horror, when you're doing stunts, when you have to run, when you have to move, I always like to say, okay, well, what kind of shoes do you like to wear and what brands do you like? And then I can take that and I can go get them shoes, because as long as the shoes match the outfit, for me, I want them to be safe and I want them to be comfortable. That's my first priority. But then I love doing accessories for actors, like just getting a bunch and having them pick it out day of, so that they feel like they have a little bit more hold on the wardrobe aspect, but then they also feel like it's their character getting ready for their day. So like, oh, I'm picking up this watch, I'm putting on these earrings or whatever. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So who are some of your like inspirations? And you've talked a little bit about your teacher, but who are your influences in the world of like costume and design? Maybe because you're so interested in the history, I'm thinking maybe historically, who are the figures that you like to look to?
Yeah, I think every costume designer can't talk about what they do today without talking about Miss Edith Head, who is
Yes.
up on my wall.
Yay.
I mean, while she wasn't the first costume designer, she was the one who really pushed costume design as a profession into people's vernacular and ears. I mean, she's the reason why we have the costume design category at the Oscars. She was the first ever costume designer to get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Like, she is the one that was like, no, we do this work. It's hard work, and we deserve the respect and the notoriety for our work. So obviously Edith Head, I mean, I've done a ton of research and still constantly doing research into Vera West. She is one of my favorites, and she was the head of Universal Costuming from 1927 to 1946. And I mean, she did all of those classics. She is the reason for The Bride and Dracula and, you know, The Invisible Woman and all of these incredible staple horror films in the genre. I love Andrea Fletch. I think her work is incredible. She did Midsommar. Laura Montgomery has become one of my newer favorite costume designers. She's fantastic. She does What We Do in the Shadows. She did Spiral. But she's like, her innovation on that show, if you've ever watched What We Do in the Shadows, like, I'm blown away every episode when Nadia walks out on screen. I'm like, oh
You're
my
just
God.
sitting there taking notes and being like,
oh, constantly. Yeah, I mean, those are the costume designers I look to. It's weird, like, because our work isn't, because just in the last few years, costume designers are actually getting notoriety now. Growing up, I didn't know a lot of costume designers. Like, you know, some of the staple ones in theater, but some of them turned out to be not so very good people. But but other than that, like, we really didn't know costume designers growing up. So it was hard to like have people to look up to. And it's funny because like that teacher that I talked about, we actually don't keep in touch. Like, it was just that one class that I have.
oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was just that one moment that I had with her. And yeah, I mean, my two best friends, Jen and Marilyn, they're also costume designers. And I mean, they inspire me all the time because they're just incredible at what they do. But they're not famous. I mean, they're famous to me, but
oh no, sometimes it's less the sort of the big names and more the people that touch our sort of everyday lives that are the biggest inspirations. Isn't that right?
Yeah. No, it's totally true. Yeah, I mean, I had an incredible, who I'm actually still close with, costume shop manager in undergrad. Her name is Melissa Ann Blizzard, and she is just the most incredible seamstress. Like, I learned from the best. Like, I was pattern blocking, which is not something that you do in a college level, but she had me like pattern blocking and fixing machines, you know, at a young age that I don't think people at my age were doing. And she has done some incredible work. I mean, when she was living in New York, you know, did the original Tracy Turnblad costume in Hairspray. She worked on Wicked, and you would never know that she has done these incredible things. And those are the women in my life that I really gravitate towards.
So I'm going to ask you a question now that I don't know if it's going to be really easy for you or really difficult, but I'm very excited to hear if you could talk us through some of your favorite costumes in horror. So maybe 3 to 5, like what are some of your favorites? You've mentioned a few already, like the bride and things like that. But yeah, tell us about some of your favorites.
Yeah, definitely the bride. Because so I don't know how true it is from my research, but I have found is that Vera West used actual medical sheets and bandages to make that dress. So not only was it this dichotomy of bride and infant and like new being coming into the world, but it was also really creative, the materials that she used. And I'm a big texture girl, and if I could find like textual symbolism in costumes, I'm like, ooh, because most people won't pick it up, but I find it clever when people can do that. Obviously the flower slug dress at the end of Midsommar, that is one of my favorites. Andrea Fletch's husband is an engineer from my reading, so he constructed that undercarriage piece to the dress to Florence Pugh's weight. So it was weighted for her body. And it was about, I think I read 10,000 silk flowers that were hand sewn on top of that gown. Like that is incredible. So that is one of my favorites. I love all of the jackets and the costuming in the Lost Boys. That's a really fun one because it feels really thrifted. It feels very in that world of the beach boardwalk, but kind of underground beach boardwalk.
Yeah, still has
California vibe.
like a touch of gothic to it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Gosh, what else? Those are the ones that come to mind. I'm sure I have others, but yeah, those are the ones those are the ones that come to mind. And those are also like films in my catalog that are just favorites of mine too. So yeah.
So then do you own any like garments from horror films? Have you ever bought anything like connected to a horror film?
No,
No.
I also just don't have that much money, so no. I can't afford those.
When you get on that big budget film that pays you so well, you'll be able to buy some memorabilia from the Lost Boys.
Yeah, right. Oh gosh. I mean, like we have like trinkets and stuff. I'm not that much of a collector. Like I'm not a tchotchke person. My fiance and I, we collect vintage Halloween decorations, but that's really about it.
Oh wow, we need to see those.
We have all these vintage blow molds and everything, but we
Wow.
also don't have a lot of room in our apartment. So maybe if we have a bigger space, but yeah, I don't have a lot of stuff.
So in preparation for this interview, I was like looking back at some of like the most like the horror costumes that seem to have endured, the kind of like silhouettes that we just recognize. And a lot of them seem to be villains, which I think is really interesting. I guess you can go sort of a bit more extreme and wild with a villain's costume. But I wanted to ask, I was thinking about, we've spoken about Bride already, and then I was thinking about Freddy and Dracula. And I wanted to ask, what do you think it is about a costume that makes it iconic?
That's a good question. I think I do think it is like what people say, where it's that you don't realize it in the moment that it becomes lightning in a bottle. But I think I don't even know if color has something to do with it, because like you can make the argument maybe color because of Freddy's red and green sweater, and how Wes Craven said that he used these opposing colors on this sweater to jar your eyes. But then when you think of like somebody like well, Dracula's in black and white, but you think of somebody like Art the Clown, he's in black and white. So like I really think it's just how the movie hits and how it is received by people. and what people are drawn to. And maybe adaptability could be it too. You know, something like Ghostface and Scream that Cynthia Bergstrom designed, where it was just a black robe with this little metallic shimmer in the fabric and this like mask from a 99-cent store. I mean, that was just kind of like like I'm sorry, my words are eluding me right now, but like it just kind of came together and just happened. And I think when you're not setting out to be iconic, things then become iconic. And we're seeing that like with the Jennifer Check cropped hoodie with the hearts on it, that has kind of become an iconic piece. The flag uniform that she wears. So I don't think, I don't really have like a concrete answer. I think it's just
it's like a beautiful accident.
Yeah, exactly. A happy accident is what it is. Yeah. But with that said, I do think that the thought and the care that goes into the work that the costume designers had done on those costumes should not be unrecognized for that, because the work was still there, and the thought and the intention behind it was still there. It just didn't set out to be iconic in the way that we have adapted them.
Yeah, it's how they're received, isn't it? It's like the conception and the how we receive it are two different things.
Right.
It must just be so incredible when that happens for you as a costume designer.
Yeah, I didn't have it's never happened to me on a huge scale, but two summers ago one summer ago, last year, 2021.
Time's all over the place. It's fine.
Honestly, though, I can't believe it's September already. I was at the Joe Bob's Jamboree, and I had done the shirt for Joe Bob in the Spookies music video, and we were going for this like old rap New York vibe for the music video. And so I was like, why don't we take the Beastie Boys Bedford Stuyvesant phys ed shirt, which was just a shirt from his high school that one of the Beastie Boys happened to wear in his music video. And I was like, why don't we make it Spookies? And so we did. And somebody came to the festival wearing that shirt, which was like crazy to me. I was like, oh my God, I made this for like $5 in my house. And now somebody's selling them on Etsy. Like that was
oh wow.
Yeah, I was like, oh my goodness, that is, and I'm not even mad. I'm just like, wow, it's a weird feeling to like see somebody wearing something that you made.
Oh, that's incredible to have that sort of like little ripple effect and to see it.
Yeah.
I bet you just never expected that at all.
No, not at all.
So you sort of spoke about color briefly before, and I wanted to ask, color is definitely, I guess it's one of the instant things that we look at when we're trying to decode costume, and I wanted to ask, like, how important is the use of color when we're trying to peel back those layers? Is it always as obvious as what we think? And what are some of your like favorite examples of color being used in horror costume, or like if you could tell us about a time when you've used color in some of your work as well, that would be interesting.
Yeah, so I always think of the nightgown that Mia Farrow is wearing in Rosemary's Baby as one of the best examples, because she's wearing this baby blue nightgown, and she as a character is already so innocent, and she's babied, and she's sort of treated like an infant and kept from a lot of information about what's going on, even just with her body. And that's the scary part about that, is that was what was happening to women in the 60s. But that use of color, I think, is definitely for the symbolism of who she is as a character. And then so we see that in our final girls, in our heroes and heroines of these movies. And then on the flip side, with color in horror, as a designer, you definitely want to subvert what the audience is perceiving. So using maybe softer colors on a villain, or like how I was saying before, Jennifer Check is kind of this anti-hero in Jennifer's Body, but using these really bright teenage feminine colors to show this like seedy, evil succubus that's lying beneath, I think is a beautiful subversion, especially at the end when she's wearing that white prom dress and she's covered in blood. Like that is just such a beautiful vision, because not only does the blood come up really well on the white, but white is such a virginal color and is used in those types of ways. So to be used in this way for that movie, it works so well. So I think when it comes to costuming horror, subverting our viewer, creating those juxtapositions in characters, and just there's not one layer, even to villains, to these characters. And I think using color in that way, softer colors or brighter colors or even darker colors, to show the humanity under all of this evil, is a really lovely way to use color in horror.
I love how you talk about like subversion and like misdirect, but also, any one character is not just one like face. It's like
Right.
there's everyone's multifaceted, and you can use color to sort of show all those different layers as well, which is so fascinating. So I wanted to ask, if you could only choose one subgenre of horror for its costuming and designs, which would you pick and why?
Oh my goodness. I think I'm gonna have to go with slashers. I really love
Yay!
slashers. I've always loved slasher movies.
My favorites.
Yeah, they're just so much fun. And I think like 80s slashers, 70s slashers, they're just so much fun. And I love seeing young women defeat the big bad, and either do it in heels or a dress or something, and just triumph over that evil. So I would love to do more slasher films.
And so what has been like the biggest challenge of your career, and what do you think's been one of like your greatest achievements, aside from the $5 t-shirt, which is a great achievement?
Thank you. I think the biggest adversity is, well, pandemic. I'll say pandemic because it's hard to do anything in this business, but then having that 2-year shutdown.
Yeah.
And I came into this business. I just moved over from theater as a designer, and I never was an assistant. I never had a mentor. I still don't have a mentor. So a lot of costume designers will come up through the ranks with mentors, and I've come up through the ranks. Like I was a dresser, I was a stitcher and all this stuff, but I never had that one person that was like, hey, let me help you and like kind of bring you around. So having to do a lot of marketing myself and a lot of cold emailing myself has been really challenging, but I welcome a challenge and it's worked out so far. So I think that's, while also my biggest adversity, I will also say it's one of my biggest achievements, that like I can say at the end of the day that like I've done all of this myself. I've done all of this, from emailing and being politely persistent to filmmakers online, being like, hey, I think you need a costume designer. I think you might need me.
Politely persistent. I like
right,
that. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So then Halloween is just around the corner, and I am curious to know, what do you get up to? And I have this image of you holding this like costume ball or in your apartment.
Oh God, I wish I had the room.
So do you normally wear a costume, or do you have any plans this year? Or is there, if you can't reveal this year, obviously, because you want to keep it secret, I guess, can you tell us about maybe a Halloween costume that you've worn or seen that you really loved?
Yeah, so it's funny. I love Halloween. I'm quite pagan with my celebrations. So I mean, in the pagan calendar, Halloween is like our New Year's. So I do feel that culmination of the year building up as Halloween gets closer. And I love the baking and the like fall treats that go along with the season. But sometimes I don't always get to wear a costume, and I spend so much of my year costuming other people that to get a bit lazy around Halloween, and I'll just wear something really nice with like I have this, one of my favorite sweaters has the creature from the Black Lagoon like embroidered on it. It's super
Oh,
cute.
wow.
But I will say one of my favorite costumes I ever did was a few years back when I was living in Florida. And I had a bigger apartment. My friends and I had a party called a dearly departed party, where you had to come dressed as a character or a person who had died. So no living people.
Oh, I
So
love this.
I went as Lizzie Borden, and I made like a Victorian coat and a skirt and did my hair. So I went as Lizzie Borden, and that was really cool. This year I am dressing up because things are coming back in person. My fiance's company Halloween party, we're going to be Sam and Susie from Moonrise Kingdom.
Oh, amazing. Well, we look forward to seeing the pictures on socials.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually I don't make costumes. I try to make it as like a challenge for me as a seamstress of like, okay, I'm going to pick a time period, I'm going to do it. But the last 2 years, I just haven't had the time.
I guess for you, it's almost like you want a bit of time off, don't you? If you're making costumes all year round, it's like, yeah, we have something here in the UK called a bin bag witch, where you just throw a bin bag over you and stick on a pointy hat and you're done.
I love that so
much. So if anyone who's watching this, or anyone who's been following your career and is thinking, oh, I'd really love to get into what Jolene does, but I don't know how to start, like, what would be some pieces of advice that you can offer to someone who might be looking to pursue a career in costume or design?
Yeah. So first of all, anybody can message me. My DMs are open on my Instagram and Twitter. If you ever have any career questions or professional questions, I can't always promise that I'll have the right answer, but I will help you find the answer if that comes to it. But
I have a question. Can I be your assistant?
I always need assistance to talk. I think just for me, what has helped the most is that designers are not only artists, but they are psychologists and historians and mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, firemen, teachers, like they're everything. So read as much as you can. A wide range of nonfiction and fiction literature has helped a ton. Just understanding people. And I mean, I don't watch runway shows. I don't really keep up with fashion, like what's happening. But if you have an interest in history and you want to do this, then start, researching. I'm not even just designers, but just like what fashion did, like why at the turn of the century did the S curve move into a boxed figure? Like just start asking those questions for yourself and start researching, because that is what is the most beneficial and will help the most in your career. Understanding where fashion came from can understand where it's going. That's kind of how it helps. So I mean, but if you have an eye for fashion, like more higher end stuff, then watch runway shows. Look what people are doing on the street. Like always consume and collect images so that you have things to draw from, because you always constantly need things to pull from. And and just kind of know what's going on, to like know who is working, who is making what films, and what they're mostly women. I mean, there are some men in our field too, but what are these women doing? Like, how are they approaching the process? What, maybe they have a different approach to an element that doesn't work for me, but works for them, and kind of learning from that way.
Some excellent advice there for any budding costumers or designers. Thank you so much, Jolene.
You're welcome.
Before we wrap up then, finally, what's next on the slate for you, if you can tell us, or what's coming out soon? What projects of yours do we have to look forward to? And where can people find you and your work online?
So next coming up is, we just had the world premiere for Scare Package 2 at Fright Fest in the UK. So that should be coming to Shudder by, I believe, the end of this calendar year. So definitely keep an eye out for that, because that one's a fun one. And I've already started reading some of the reviews, so I'm very excited for the rest of the world to see it.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. We just wrapped Cannibal Mukbang, which keep an eye out for that. I think the projected time is you'll probably start seeing stuff finished about that by the early 23, so the end of this calendar year, early next year. And then I leave for another project in another week, so hopefully soon I can start talking about that one. And yeah.
Oh, she's keeping it from us.
I know.
It'll be
It's
worth it.
really,
It'll be worth
it
it.
totally is. It's a beautiful folk horror film set in northeastern Pennsylvania. So I'm very
Oh,
excited to,
wow.
yeah.
And where can we find you online, Jolene?
Absolutely. So my Instagram is at Jolene Marie _designs. I am Jo Marie on Twitter. And you can follow my link tree is up in my bio, and my blog is up there. My podcast is up there. And yeah, just keep looking out. I'll always post when I'm doing new stories or new lectures. And October 20th, if you're in the New York area, I'm doing a lecture. It's part of a new series that I'm starting to create through Cinema Arts Center, where Rebecca saw my Hitchcock lecture. And we're going to be showing Evil Dead, and we're going to be talking about Evil Dead with my best friend and filmmaker, Marcus Leibine.
Oh, that sounds like an amazing night. I'm going to check my penny jar and see if there's enough money in there for a flight.
Come on over. I've got cash.
Well, thank you so much, Jolene, for joining me. Thank you to everyone for watching. Don't forget to check out ghoulsmagazine.com for the latest articles, editorials, and reviews. Check out all of Jolene's links, a podcast, a blog. Follow her on Twitter. We'll be posting all her links along with this video. And remember to keep it ghoulish. Thanks for watching, everybody.